I just wanted to say that Brent McMillan is the Chief Operating Officer of Manitoba Starch Products, and he is going to answer some of the questions that Jeff has in regards to ERP systems. They have successfully implemented such a system, and he will guide us on his experience.
Excellent. All right. Well,
it's showing now, Jeff.
Hey, there we go. Excellent. All right. Okay. Well, let's get started then. Brent, hoping you're there.
You bet.
Excellent. Thank you. Kara, first question is, can you please tell us about Manitoba Starch Products and how it uses ERP?
Sure. My first comment, I guess, would be to add a little codicil to Karen's comments. They're successfully implemented an ERP system. Successful till now. As Brian indicated in his presentation, a very good presentation, by the way, Brian, very accurate on the details and the process. It's a consistent work in progress. There's always things to do. So Manitoba Starch, we are Canada's only food grade potato starch manufacturer. We're actually one of two in North America. What we do is make potato starch. We collect it from the French fry manufacturing industry and the chipping industry, as it's called, the potato chip manufacturers like Frito-Lay, Old Dutch. As part of their process, potato starch is created, I guess, for lack of a better word, released from the potato when they are cutting their French fries and potato chips, and we capture that byproduct. So we are upcycled certified. We are a very green business, as they say, because we are capturing a product that was at one point in time headed to the waste stream and created a lot of expense and issues for those manufacturers. We've been in business for 20 plus years. We have been using an ERP system since 2016. Well, our ERP system, we are basically, again, as Brian said in his presentation, we had several different software systems that we were using across our business, everything from production to warehousing, quality control, finance, all of those things, and again, required a lot of data reentry from program to program, which in turn created many opportunities for errors. In theory, your ERP system allows you to tie it all together and helps you to eliminate that issue. Again, I say that in theory. The key is having it set up properly and making sure it works properly. But that's really, we use ERP from soup to nuts, beginning to end. It manages our ordering process, our customers, our QA, finance. It's all tied in there together. So.
Okay, excellent. I think you may have answered this already, but I'm just curious, was there any particular impetus that really got you interested in investigating and ultimately adopting an ERP system?
Part of it,
you kind of alluded to it.
Yeah, as above, you know, as I said for the previous question, tying it all together and making it easier. We were looking towards some substantial growth and trying to advance our business, knowing that we were the only player in Canada and there was a lot of opportunity for expansion and growth. So we really wanted to take care of cleaning up the inefficient process that we had right at that time.
Sure.
With everything due to data management across the programs, the growth, the compliance issues, just basically all of the items that Brian touched on in his "Are you ready for an ERP program" page. Right. That was us. We went through that process and identified the need for these areas to be tied together for more efficiency. Okay.
Excellent. You're doing a great job of pre-answering the questions here. So you mentioned a bunch of processes, and I guess further to my question to Brian, did that include at some point even the production processes, like on the processing floor?
Yeah, when you look at an ERP system, there's many different functions to it. We use a program called, or an ERP system called Epicor. It's not a well-known one, more so SAP. People are more familiar maybe with SAP, some of those. But it involves everything: sales management, service management, production, material flows, finances. There's even an executive analysis component for all of your reporting and financials, and you can really tailor it to, and all ERP systems are the same. You can tailor it to fit your needs. The key, like I say, we basically have integrated all of those programs. The one I would say that we are a little light on using because of the nature of our business is the sales management one. We really don't use the CRM module
Sure.
because of our business. I mean, we are a food manufacturing business, or a food manufacturing company, but we are dealing probably with a lot of businesses that are similar to those that are on this call. We are a B2B company. We're not a B2C. So we don't have the end consumer as our customer. We're selling our product to somebody who's using it to make their products, which are being sold to the customer. So our customer base is relatively small. In direct relation, we have a couple of distributors in Canada who then deal with 100+ customers each on their side, so that our CRM module doesn't need to be as evolved.
Right.
But the rest of it is, I mean, order entry, shipping, receiving, production, finance, quality, pretty much everything else that's involved in your business. We are using those aspects of the ERP system to run our business.
Okay, excellent. That kind of makes me wonder, just as an auxiliary question here to that is, of course, when you've got an integrated software, you're going to be using what they think is the best version of CRM, what they think is the best version of purchasing, and what they think is the best version of inventory management. Did you find that you had to settle or adapt yourselves to that in any fashion, or did you find that this one whole bundle from Epicor was, as an example, was pretty well suited to your needs?
Yeah, generally speaking, I would say any ERP system is the same. That's kind of a general phrase. They're all the same.
Okay.
Certain ones have certain benefits, features that Epicor offered us some things that we were looking for that maybe the others didn't. Part of ours choice to go with Epicor was flexibility in the production model, or production model, I should say. Our business is different than anybody else's, and in all honesty, it was a real struggle for the Epicor team to get their head wrapped around the way our production process works.
Interesting.
Most businesses have, and Brian again alluded to this in his presentation. You get your customer order, you put it into the system, it flows through, it hits your pre-planning stage if there's a design component required. It comes out and goes to production. It's made, it's entered into inventory, it's shipped, sold, invoiced, etc. Our production process is backwards. We have what are called take or pay contracts with our suppliers, and our suppliers provide us with whatever product they produce in a given day. We do daily pickups with our suppliers in Manitoba, and process based on what they supply. So it's kind of a reverse engineered system. Instead of having a customer order that you're manufacturing for, we manufacture based on our inputs, put it into inventory, and then sell what the customer needs. So it was a struggle that way. But again, the flexibility of the program is what it is. And generally speaking, when you're talking about order entry, production, warehousing, invoicing, it's the same in every business. Yeah, you may have to tweak the way you do it a little bit, which we did because we were using different systems and you had to bring it all into one. So there was some limitations, but customization is an option. But again, like Brian said, be careful how much you do. So
yeah, okay, very interesting. All right, let's move on. You've alluded to this a bit. I guess part of what I'm thinking about in terms of a difficult process, and I think there's some other questions coming just insofar as staff involvement or, but yeah, just in terms of, was it a difficult process to implement? Was it just terribly disruptive to your business?
Short answer is yes, it was difficult. Yeah. Can't I guess upplay enough the comments again Brian made. Get a team, get a dedicated. Amanda's comment of you were 6 people, then everybody needs to be involved. You need to have representation from every department on your team. They need to be involved from front to back. The more time you spend analyzing your situation, selecting the appropriate, and making sure you understand what you need, doing all of the data cleansing, as Brian was talking about, when you're doing your data upload in response to Amanda's question again, it's a huge step. I can't intimate enough how important the pre-planning stages are. The more of that you do, the easier the rest of the process becomes. But yeah, it's big, it's busy, it takes a lot of time. And at the time of switchover, it is disruptive. You need to plan. Yeah. You need to plan for the implementation days well in advance, because in reality, you're going to want to do duplication. You're going to want to enter everything in your old system and your new system and make sure financials flow through. And at the end of the day, you're going to be comparing your old system, let's say your balance sheet, your income statement, your trial balance again. You're going to want to inventory balances, all of those things. You're going to want to compare your old system to your new to make sure that the ERP system is matching what your previous system did.
Right.
So it is.
That makes sense.
It's a huge time component, but again, the more time and planning invested, the easier it is.
Yeah. So in terms of implementing that at Manitoba Starch and having that duplication, was like that extra time component, basically doing the work twice, did that require a lot of staff overtime, a lot of...
It required some. What it also required, Jeff, was some just planning on our part, right? Getting everything in advance, ready to go and say, hey guys, you're going to be needing to do twice the work. So you're going to need to either push off the mundane things that can wait, or, stay on top of things. Yeah. In all honesty, we spent a great deal of time, like weeks getting ready for the install. Sure. We thought we were well prepared. Brian mentioned kind of an 80-20 rule. I would recommend a 90-10 rule. Spend way more time in advance than you think you need. We thought we were doing great, and at the end of the day, it felt like we did 20-80 after the install happened. It's a lot of work. It is. Yeah. It's worth it. In the end, I'm not trying to scare everybody away. Just prepared that it is a challenge. It's a lot of work, but it was worth it. So, I mean, there was issues. Some of them were specific to our process, as I mentioned before. Trying to understand production was a challenge. That's the finance is finance. Shipping and receiving is the same. Order entry is the same. Yeah. Across businesses. Our production process was the challenge, and making sure that your parts list to create the job that's going to make your widget that you're going to sell to your customer. That is
right.
That's one of the biggest parts, the most important parts, and making sure that you have proper valuations in your system for what all of the bits and pieces cost to make up your widget, because that flows it all the way through your ERP system from a financial perspective, impacting your raw material inventory, impacting your cost of goods, your finished goods inventory, and your final financials, your profit at the end of the day. So
sure, absolutely. Your response triggered another thought with me, Brent, in terms of traceability. And of course, your traceability is probably pretty straightforward insofar as it's from this potato plant or that potato plant. But is that something you were able to integrate as well with the adoption of ERP?
Yes, yeah. We actually, as I said, we have a very small customer base, but those customers, our customers' products are sold all over North America. Yeah. So if you have an end retailer, something people may not know, potato starch is used in the shredded cheese industry. So as an example, really? You buy a bag of shredded cheese at your local grocery store, that very opaque white substance on the outside of the cheese is potato starch. It keeps it from
isn't that something?
Yeah. So for instance, so we can do a recall inside of 24 hours, regardless of where that cheese was bought. If it has our starch on it, we know exactly where the input material for that starch came from, and we can have a response. We have our testing results. Within 24 hours, we can provide a response to say, hey, your contamination couldn't be a result of our input because of these factors. Like if there was a salmonella issue with cheese, well, it couldn't have come from us because here's our test results from the lot that you use to make that product.
Oh, isn't that interesting? So that could be a real money saver, because if you didn't have that and the blame game was going around and everyone else, you were the only one who wasn't able to substantiate your traceability, and then what do, right? You would get dinged.
You better have a good insurer.
Yeah, that's a really interesting.
You better have good recall insurance is what I meant to say.
Yes.
Recalling your product isn't that expensive. Recalling your customers' products becomes immensely expensive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because the cost is just multiplied exponentially. Wow. We kind of alluded to this already, just insofar as staff time requirement. But I'm kind of wondering from the service provider end of things, like, did they spend a lot of time on site with the implementation? Did they help with a lot of you mentioned about the data transfer piece, and I guess hoping they were there step by step with you and your team as you went through the implementation and testing?
Yeah, definitely. The service provider was there, and I would hazard a guess to say all service providers would be the same. We had two primary contacts from the service provider. One was specialized in ops, so everything from production, inventory management, warehousing. QA was a bit of a challenge for the individual. His field of study, so to speak, was on the strictly ops side. Everything from bringing in your raw materials to pushing out your finished goods.
Sure.
We had another individual then who worked on the financial side of it. So they kind of worked a little bit together on order entry, those types of things, but the financial component of everything, how it flowed through the system, they had a finance specialist who worked with us on that side of it, making sure the costs associated with product flows through your program or through your company appeared and moved properly through the financial statements. So
interesting.
They did a lot of work leading up, and again, the data upload, your customer database, your part database, all of anything you can think of that you need in your ERP system. They were there and said, hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you thought about that? And helped you through building the data upload for the in advance of, and they actually did some testing and said, hey, you know what, you need to do this, you need to do that. It was all for those of you that are familiar with spreadsheets, it was a CSV spreadsheet, so comma separated values.
Yes.
It just pushed up into the system. So
sure,
they were here. That was in advance of install. Then they were here when the install happened. They were here for about a period of a week. One comment I would have is push back on your supplier, on the service provider, and get them back on site again later. Get them to come back in. You're going to have glitches. You're going to have bumps. You're going to have bugs in the system. Get them back and with technology. I mean, we can do a lot of things on Teams and Zoom as we are doing now, but just said having them on site so you can lead them through the process and they can lead you through the process,
right?
So to speak.
So it sounds like there's probably some value there to either having that as a condition in your agreement with them, and perhaps even with having someone, if possible, who's local, a little more local than
right. A little more local is a benefit for sure. Another thing I would talk to, I guess, with the staff time requirement. We found it extremely, or we have found since, we didn't do a very good job of it when we were doing the install. A lot of benefit in having your production team involved in the discussions around the finance side of production.
Interesting.
We don't, like, our production people aren't necessarily involved in the finance side, but to give them an understanding on changes or things that they do and how it impacts and flows through the financials. They don't need to have a CPA designation or anything like that. They just understand that what they do impacts other departments, and they may not think of it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like it's really valuable to have the varying perspectives. And when you mentioned about the vendors saying, hey, have you thought about this? It made me think of something I say to clients, and that's you don't know what you don't know, right?
Exactly.
Because it's not your field, and that, that's okay. You're learning, you're new to this. So, and there really are no dumb questions either, because and ask every question you have, whether you think they're dumb or not, because ultimately it probably will be pretty valuable to know that.
Yeah. And one other, I guess, comment I would make on the whole installation or staff time required. We're fortunate enough that we have in-house IT.
Okay.
Having your IT person, we have a person, not a team, we have a person, but having that person involved in this is key for minor tweaks to the system later, minor customizations, because most of or at least our service provider, we can make customizations to the system ourselves.
Oh, okay.
When it comes to little bits of process change, we can set up our own jobs, we can adjust our own jobs, all of those things. So.
Oh, interesting. Well, so even if a person didn't have their own in-house IT person or department, even if they had someone or had someone they could contract on a job basis to do those little patches, it could probably be quicker and maybe more cost effective than getting the vendor back, eh?
Right. Well, and the key the vendors all provide this service, but it's on and again, we can contact our supplier and it gets queued up and they do the work for you if you need to. But from a responsiveness perspective, having somebody who knows what they're doing internally, things are a lot faster.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. It makes a lot of sense. Okay. I think we answered this one just back with that traceability question in terms of, how that could be worth it. But obviously, from what I'm hearing from you, Brent, is that despite all the effort, all the work, all the time, and whatever cost was involved, it sounds like it ultimately was worth the time and effort.
Yeah, it was. I say that a little tongue in cheek. I mean, some days you you're asking yourself, was it worth it when you're pulling your hair out? But now that we're
Of course.
now that we're 7 years down the road, yeah, it is. It's
Yeah. Now past to being
so,
fond
yeah,
memories.
yeah. Still saying what Brian talked about. You know, the continual upgrading, those types of things.
Yeah.
There's always change. There's always improvement. One comment I would have, Quinn had, or sorry, not Quinn, it was an answer to Joel's question
Oh,
on
yes.
the cybersecurity side of it. We had the program stored on site on our servers to begin with,
Okay.
which was good and bad. When it comes to updates, automatic updates, it means you have to bring your IT person, right? Whoever you use for that service, or whether it's an employee, you have to do those yourself. And sometimes an update would adversely affect customizations you'd made in the system.
Oh, of course.
So we, in the last year and a half, switched to cloud-based, and because our supplier is intimately involved then and looks after all of the upgrades, they're cognizant of our customizations, and we haven't had issues with our customizations being impacted since.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of work, a lot of time required, but in the end, I think it's made us more streamlined and has definitely reduced the opportunity for human error, because provided you put it in correctly at the beginning, it flows through the system accurately.
Sure.
From inventory management, inventory counts, you know, financial repercussion, all of that stuff is hand in hand connected all the way through the systems.
Sure. Excellent. Okay. Well, I have one final question for you, Brent, just in terms of if you have any, you've been giving us great advice right along the way here, and we thank you for that. Just wondering if you had any further comments for anyone who's considering implementing ERP.
Yeah, I just think kind of a recap a little bit on some of the key points. From beginning to end, the biggest thing for us to start with would be, or comment I would have, is consider hiring a consultant like Brian. I'm not pitching Brian Shingle here for him, but consider hiring a Brian
Sure.
to help with the search and selection process. You know, there's all these questions about what is the service provider's provisions like. You mentioned it. What's their location? Are they local? You know, do they have
Sure.
local support? Is it national? Is it international support? How many users are in your immediate area? So if you ever need somebody to attend or support, you know, do they have a service tech or somebody coming who's going to be in the area and they can pop by and discuss issues with you?
Absolutely.
A lot of them have a user network, and if you've got a local group that's using it, or a local 2 or 3 other companies, maybe you get to know those guys and you can reach out and say, hey, we're having this little problem. Have you seen that before? What would your comments be?
Sure.
Touched on it already, cloud-based. That would be something I would recommend over in-house.
Okay.
The comment of expensive, is it expensive? It is expensive. I'm not going to it cost us a lot of money to get this program in there. Is it too expensive? That's something you need to decide on your own.
Yeah.
In the end, I feel it's worth it, but Ryan talked about your monthly fees for all of your programs. Ours are substantial for this program every year.
Yeah.
But again, it has to do with the size of your business and your needs. It's a lot of work, but it's an extremely valuable system if it's set up correctly.
Yes.
Patience. Patience is a big one. Have patience. Regardless of how prepared you are, there will be issues, and we still have issues now 7 years later. You may not need, again, ties back to Brian's comments of being prepared and knowing what you need. You may not need all the modules. We don't, as I said, we don't use the CRM module to anywhere near its fullest extent.
Sure.
And one of the biggest thing, again, we're food manufacturers, and it is that quality control piece, that recall piece, lot tracking. Those things in the ERP system are paramount. I feel it ties your lot tracking from your raw material supplier. So if you buy a defective piece for your widget, that defective piece, the lot number associated with it is in your system, and you can go back to your supplier and push back on them, just like your customers are going to push back on you if they have with your lot number. And again, the slides that Brian had, the myths of the ERP, too expensive, too difficult, will solve all your problems. Those are very accurate points that Brian made. It's not a one-time event. It is an ongoing, growing thing. And the food for thought stuff that Brian touched on as well. Clear understanding of your requirements, and make sure that you involve as many people on your team as you can. Be prepared for change and try to limit the amount of customizations. All of those things are excellent points that Brian, for anybody who's considering it, I would take Brian's presentation and go through it again and hey, are we doing this? Are we doing that? Because it was a good presentation, very similar to the presentation we had when we worked with our provider, like Brian, the guy that went out and hunted down what ERP systems would work for us. So.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Just one thought. So if someone was saying, this sounds great, maybe I'd like to do it in bits and pieces though, rather than jump in with everything. Would you, like, just from maybe some of the emphasis, and I guess maybe some of the potential opportunity costs, if someone was to start somewhere, do you think the lot tracking piece and the traceability piece would be probably the best way to start in terms of, potential cost benefit?
No, if you're going to do it all. At the end, I know it's nice to think you can piecemeal it, but basically what an ERP system does is bring all the pieces together. So you do need to do all the pieces at once. Sure. It's not a piecemeal type application, because really you're going back to what you had. If you're looking at moving away from piecemeal to ERP, do it all at once, because it does tie it all together. You talk about lot tracking and traceability. Well, that ties all the way back to your PO system for sending a PO to your customer to get the pieces to make your widget. Well, of course, that ties in there, right? And that's your PO. Sure. And that's receiving. It ties to your production management. It ties through the entire system. So.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Well, this has been awesome, Brent. Thank you very much. Karen, do we have any questions from our guests for Brent?
I do not see any questions. We can open it up. Does anybody have any questions for Brent? Well, Brent, we appreciate you taking the time away from your business to provide a layman's perspective.
No problem at all. I'm actually just getting ready to go on holidays. So.
Oh, good timing.
Oh, nice. Well, have a wonderful holiday.
I will. I'm going somewhere where people would not consider it maybe a holiday. I'm going to Vietnam. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, it looks very lush there and very humid and warm. So should be interesting.
Yeah, I don't see any more questions coming in, no hands raised. So I just want to thank both of you for a very informative session. And I do think it is important to hear of someone's actual experience with the system. So it's, great to hear. Just before I shut that off, we do have one question for you. From finding a consultant to project completion, what was the length of time?
Well, we installed an ERP program 7 years ago, so I would say 8 years, Todd. It takes about a year to ours was maybe 9 months, but from the time we engaged the consultant, or started to look for a consultant, to the time that we were installed and felt comfortable that the system was operating the way we wanted it to, I would say 12 months at a minimum. That said, constant change, constant improvements. As you realize what an ERP system can do for you, you realize it can do more for you. And you keep making improvements and changes and increases and tweaks. And at the end of the day, it is a lot of work, but I believe it's worth it.
That's good to know. Well, thank you again for this enlightening presentation, and it gives us a lot to think about. With that,
just one
I think,
quick comment, Karen.
yes.
I mean, in all honesty, folks, if you do have questions after and you want to bounce something off of me, by all means, get in touch with Karen or Jeff, and they can give you my contact details. And I don't mind answering questions to help fellow food processors move along in the world. So
that's awesome. That's a very kind offer, Brent. Thank you very much for that.
But don't expect a response in the next few weeks.
Of course.
Well, thank you for that offer. Okay.